There are moments in the history of this search that divide everything into before and after. The original discovery in 1795 was one of them. The first confirmation of the flood tunnel system was one of them. The identification of the swamp as a man-made feature was one of them. Each of those moments changed what Oak Island meant, and what the search was actually looking for, and how seriously the people conducting it needed to take the engineering sophistication of whoever built this place. What the team found beneath the massive boulder on Lot 8 is one of those moments. Not a fragment, not a feature that gestures towards something larger without delivering it. Not the kind of ambiguous find that requires months of analysis before anyone is willing to commit to a conclusion. What they found beneath that boulder, in the raw earth exposed when 40,000 pounds of deliberately placed granite was finally lifted away, is evidence of a second money pit. A second shaft, a second engineered excavation, a second vertical access point constructed with the same deliberate precision, the same systematic approach to concealment, and the same underlying design philosophy that produced the original money pit 230 years ago, sitting in Lot 8 beneath a boulder that was placed over it by people who needed it to stay hidden and very nearly succeeded in keeping it that way forever. The implications of a second money pit are not incremental. They are not a refinement of what was already known or a confirmation of what was already suspected. They are a transformation of the entire framework through which this island has been understood. Because a second shaft built to the same standard as the first does not suggest a single buried cache protected by extraordinary engineering. It suggests a site, a planned, multi-feature, island-wide depositional complex in which the original money pit was not the whole of the operation but one element of something considerably larger. Stay with this, because what comes next changes everything again. Welcome back to the channel, and wherever you are in the world right now, whether it is morning coffee or midnight and you cannot sleep, this is the video you want to be watching because the ground on Oak Island just gave up something it has been holding for centuries. So drop a comment below and tell this community where you are joining from tonight. And tonight this community gets to witness the moment when the search for Oak Island's secret stops being a search for a single buried treasure and becomes something else entirely. Something larger. Something that was always there in the evidence if you knew how to read it, but that required this specific discovery, this confirmation of a second engineered shaft beneath a 40,000-pound boulder in Lot 8, to become impossible to see any other way. The original money pit was never the whole story. It was always one chapter of a longer one. And the chapter that just opened in Lot 8 is going to change what this island means, and what the team is actually looking for in ways that the rest of this season is only beginning to work through. To understand why the discovery of a second shaft is so significant, you have to start with what the first money pit actually tells us about the people who built it, because the implications of duplicating that construction are only visible against the background of what building it once required. The original money pit, discovered in 1795 by a group of young men who noticed a circular depression in the ground and made the decision that would consume generations of searchers after them, revealed itself over the first excavations as something that should not have been possible. Oak log platforms at regular intervals going down into the earth, each one a deliberate marker of depth and a deliberate obstacle to casual removal of whatever lay below them. A flood tunnel system connecting the pit to the ocean at a precisely calculated depth, a hydraulic defense mechanism that activated automatically when excavation reached the critical level, and that flooded the shaft with seawater faster than any pump available to 19th century treasure hunters could remove it. The engineering of that system, the calculation of depths and gradients and flow rates required to make it function reliably without maintenance across an indefinite period, represents a level of technical capability that historians are still not fully comfortable attributing to any specific organization in the relevant period. That engineering was not cheap. It was not quick. It was not the work of a small group of people operating informally and improvising as they went. It required survey work, excavation on a significant scale, the production and placement of large quantities of work timber, and the construction of a flood tunnel system that required its own separate engineering effort to design and build. The original money pit represents an investment of resources and expertise that, by any reasonable estimate, could not have been accomplished in less than months of sustained organized effort by a team with genuine technical capability and serious institutional backing. Now there is a second one. In Lot 8, beneath a boulder that required purpose-built modern lifting equipment to move, the team has found evidence of a shaft constructed to the same standard. The same deliberate excavation, the same systematic approach to the construction of the pit itself, and the same underlying engineering philosophy that characterized the original discovery. Not a natural void. Not a geological feature that resembles a shaft from a certain angle in favorable light. A second engineered shaft, built by the same people who built the first one, for reasons that the island is only now beginning to reveal. The boulder that was covering this shaft deserves its own moment of attention, because it is not incidental to the discovery, it is the discovery, or at least the first half of it. 40,000 pounds. The weight of nearly 3 fully loaded school buses combined into a single mass of Nova Scotia granite positioned with deliberate precision over a specific point in Lot 8. The placement of that boulder was not geological. The team established that conclusively before the lift began, confirming that the rock's position over this specific feature was not the result of natural deposition or glacial movement, but of intentional human action by people who understood exactly what they were covering and exactly why needed to be covered in a way that would resist discovery indefinitely. The choice of a boulder as the sealing mechanism for the Lot 8 shaft is itself significant when you consider it against the sealing mechanism used for the original money pit. The money pit was sealed from above by the systematic backfilling of the shaft with layers of worked timber and compacted earth, a concealment method that made the surface appear undisturbed, while creating the internal structure that would defeat any excavation attempt that reached the tunnel level. The Lot 8 shaft was sealed by an entirely different method, by placing an enormous boulder over the entrance in a way that made the shaft inaccessible without equipment that did not exist when the boulder was placed, and that treats the shaft entrance not as something to be disguised, but as something to be physically blocked. Two different sealing methods for two apparently similar shafts suggests intentional differentiation. The original money pit was built to be found by people who knew what to look for, or at least to be findable in a way that would defeat any attempt at retrieval without triggering the flood system. The Lot 8 shaft was built to be genuinely invisible, sealed under a feature so massive that its very size was the camouflage. The casual searcher who might have noticed the depression marking the original money pit would have walked past the Lot 8 boulder without a second thought, seeing nothing but a large rock in an unremarkable stretch of island terrain. The difference in concealment strategy between the two shafts implies a difference in what they contain, or a difference in how long they were designed to stay hidden, and either implication is significant in ways the team is still working through. The question of what a second money pit was built to contain is the question that the entire excavation effort is now organized around, and it is a question that the existence of the second shaft transforms in a fundamental way. The original money pit has always been interpreted within a framework that assumes a single primary deposit at its base, the treasure or the documents or the artifacts that whoever built this place wanted to protect, with the engineering of the flood tunnels representing the protection built around that single primary cache. That framework, single deposit plus elaborate protection, has shaped the search from the beginning and has been the default assumption of every serious investigator who has worked on this island. A second shaft challenges that assumption directly, because if there is a second engineered shaft constructed to the same standard as the first, the most natural explanation is not that the original builders decided to double protect a single deposit by building two separate access shafts to the same chamber. The most natural explanation is that there are two deposits, two separate caches of whatever was brought to this island and buried here, each protected by its own shaft and its own engineering, each placed in a specific location on the island for reasons that the overall site plan determined. And if there are two deposits, the question of the island's total capacity expands dramatically. The assumption that the money pit contains everything that was brought here is no longer supportable. The island contained more than the original pit, and it may contain more than the 2 shafts now known to exist. This is the transformation that the Lot 8 discovery represents, not the addition of a second feature to the existing inventory of Oak Island's mysteries, but the revision of the fundamental framework through which the island has been understood. Oak Island is not a single feature site with a single buried prize at its center. It is a multi-feature depositional complex designed at an island-wide scale, with multiple shafts protecting multiple deposits that were placed here by people with the resources and the organizational capability to build not once but repeatedly, not in one location but across the island, not to protect one thing, but to protect several things that together constituted an operation too significant and too large for any single hiding place to be adequate. The engineering required to build a second shaft to the standard of the first place's extraordinary demands on whoever was responsible for the Oak Island construction, and understanding those demands is important for understanding who those people actually were. Consider what building the original money pit required in terms of resources and expertise. The excavation of a deep vertical shaft in the soil conditions present on Oak Island is a substantial undertaking even with modern equipment. Doing it with pre-industrial tools while maintaining the structural integrity of the shaft walls and ensuring that the shaft did not collapse during construction required specific knowledge and practice technique. The installation of the oak log platforms at regular intervals required a supply of work timber in significant quantities, timber that had to be sourced, prepared, transported to the island, and placed with the precision required to serve both their structural and their concealment functions. The construction of the flood tunnel system required a separate engineering effort of comparable scale, including the surveying of the tunnel route, the excavation of the tunnel itself through terrain that would have been geologically challenging, and the finishing of the tunnel in a way that ensured it would function reliably across an indefinite period without maintenance. Now double it, because building a second shaft to the same standard requires the same resources, the same expertise, and the same sustained organizational effort as the first, and it requires them in addition to the first, rather than instead of it. The total resource commitment implied by 2 money pits built to the same standard is not twice what the original money pit implied. It is more than that, because 2 construction operations of this scale require not just twice the materials and twice the labor, but twice the planning, twice the surveying, twice the engineering oversight, and the organizational capacity to manage both operations either simultaneously or in close sequence without the quality of either suffering. The organization that built both shafts was not improvising. It was not operating at the edge of its capacity. It was building to a plan, with resources sufficient to execute that plan fully, and it treated the engineering standard of each shaft as non-negotiable, regardless of how many shafts the plan required. The Knights Templar built to exactly that standard, in exactly that way, with exactly that combination of resources and organizational discipline. Their constructions across 2 centuries of operation in the Holy Land and Europe consistently reflect a refusal to compromise engineering quality, regardless of the scale of the project, and the total construction output implied by the Oak Island evidence. 2 shafts of this standard plus the flood tunnel systems associated with each, plus the swamp modification, plus the swamp pathway, plus the boulder placement over Lot 8, is consistent with the resource base of an organization of the Templar size and capability, and entirely inconsistent with any smaller or less organized candidate. The Lot 8 location is significant beyond the mere fact of the shaft's existence there, and the team's researchers have been working to understand why this specific location was chosen for the second shaft rather than any other point on the island. Lot 8 sits in a specific geometric relationship to the primary axis that the Season 20 survey established between the Swamp Pathway and Nolan's Cross. The relationship is not random. When the position of the Lot 8 shaft is plotted against the geometric framework of the island-wide master plan, it occupies a position that the plan's logic suggests was deliberate, a position that reflects the same application of geometric design principles to site layout that the alignment of the Swamp Pathway and Nolan's Cross already demonstrated. The original money pit also occupies a position that the geometric analysis connects to the master plan, and the relationship between the two shafts, their positions relative to each other, and relative to the primary axis of the site, is consistent with a kind of deliberate geometric positioning that characterizes medieval sacred site planning of the type associated with the Templar architectural tradition. In practical terms, what this means is that the second shaft in Lot 8 was not placed there because the terrain was convenient or because it was the first suitable location the builders found when they needed somewhere to dig. It was placed there because the master plan specified that location, because the geometric logic of the overall site design required a feature at that position, and because the builders were disciplined enough and capable enough to put it exactly where the plan said it needed to be regardless of what that required in terms of effort and engineering. The boulder over the shaft entrance, 40,000 pounds of granite, positioned with the same precision as everything else on this island, was part of that placement, not an afterthought, not a convenient piece of local stone that happened to be near the shaft entrance, a deliberate sealing element, chosen for its weight and its ability to prevent access, positioned over the shaft entrance with the same intentionality that every other element of this construction reflects. The team is operating now with a level of urgency that the magnitude of the discovery justifies, and the urgency is not just about what is at the bottom of the Lot 8 shaft. It is about what the existence of the Lot 8 shaft implies about the rest of the island. If the island-wide master plan specified 2 shafts in the locations now confirmed, the geometric analysis of the plan can be used to identify other positions on the island where the plan's logic might specify additional features. The team's researchers are doing exactly that work, applying the same geometric framework that connected the Swamp Pathway to Nolan's Cross, and that placed both known shafts in deliberate relationship to the primary axis, to search for other positions on the island that the plan might have designated as significant. The results of that analysis are preliminary, and the team is appropriately cautious about committing to specific predictions before the excavation work that would confirm or refute them. But the preliminary analysis is producing candidates, positions on the island that the geometric framework flags as potentially significant, and the survey work designed to investigate those positions is already underway as part of the ongoing Season 13 operation. What the team may be approaching is not the end of the search for a single buried prize at the bottom of the original money pit. It may be the beginning of a comprehensive excavation of a multi-feature site whose full extent the master plan geometry is only now making visible. The flood tunnels are still running, and the pumps are still working, and the island is still doing what it has always done, which is resist with every engineering capability that its original builders invested in making retrieval as difficult as possible for as long as possible. None of that has changed, and none of it will change until the last shaft is opened, and the last deposit is reached, and the last secret this island has been keeping is finally brought to the surface. But the framework has changed. The understanding of what this island is, and what it contains, and how it was designed, has expanded in a way that the discovery of the second money pit made necessary, and that the work of Season 13 is now equipped to pursue with a clarity and a direction that no previous season of this search possessed. 2 shafts, 2 deposits, 1 master plan laid across an entire island by people who were building something designed to last forever and very nearly succeeded. The boulder on Lot 8 kept its secret for centuries. The 40,000 pounds of granite that sealed the second money pit from the world outlasted the order that placed it, and the civilization that produced that order, and 230 years of the most determined treasure hunt in recorded history. It did not outlast the Fellowship of Oak Island. The second shaft is open, what is inside it is about to be found. And what finding it means for everything else this island is hiding is the question that the rest of Season 13 is going to answer. What comes next you do not want to miss.